Hello, hello. Welcome. We are so glad you guys are here today. Thanks for joining us, whether you are local to where I am, Phoenix, Arizona, or you're in another city, another state, or maybe another country like Andrew is. We are so glad you are here. So good morning, or maybe good afternoon. My name is Jessica Pierce, and I'm the CEO and founder of Career Connectors, and it's going to be a great day. We've never had either of these awesome keynote speakers here, and so we're excited to hear what they have to say and to bring some new content and information to our events. So if you could all do me a favor and open up your chat. On the bottom of your screen, there is should be an icon that says chat. Click on that, and that will allow you to chat during the whole event. And it is the way that you're going to be able to engage with us and talk and ask questions. And as I get started kind of going over who Career Connectors is, what I would like for you to do is I want to get a little bit of a sense of who we have on the call today. And so if you are actively in career transition and looking for a new job, put a 1. If you are kind of thinking about searching for a new job, or maybe you're like, hey, I might want to open a business, or I'm currently working and I'm just kind of thinking about changing, put a 2. And if you are a community partner, a volunteer, a speaker, one of our coaches, drop a 3. And so we have a 1 for active job search, 2 for, hey, I'm testing things out. I might be changing jobs, and a 3 for a community partner or a volunteer. That will give us a good sense on who's here today. And we have a great mix, it looks like. Welcome, Leslie and Tracy and Jaleesa and Antonio and Debbie. We're so glad. Keisha, Susan, so glad to see all of you here today. You're in the right place at the right time. Career Connectors is all about empowering you. So whether you are active job search, whether you are a service provider, whether you are somebody that's thinking about doing something different and new, maybe you're an employer on the call today, welcome. Our mission is to really provide resources so that you can take your next step forward and achieve the job, the goal, the business, what you want to do. And so that is who we are. We launched 15 years ago, and it has been our pleasure to be able to serve over 75,000 people. Many people that have gone from, hey, I'm laid off and I don't know my next step, and I just need some guidance to get me there. We have seen people on that journey. We've seen people come out of college and looking for their next career. We've seen people choose to leave a position and just needed some support to go from, hey, I left my role, I left my company, I left my job, I've never done anything else before, but I know that I am called to be doing something else. And so welcome, so glad you guys are here. Let me go through some of the tech stuff real quick. So again, that chat box is on the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a phone, sometimes there is a drop down, like there's 3 little dots and it says more, and the chat is located there. And then on the display panel, over on the top right of your screen, there is a view option, and it says side-by-side speaker view. That will give you the best option for seeing the presentation that's up, and then also seeing the speaker that is live. And so you can choose that display by going up to the top right and clicking view, and then side-by-side speaker view. And then at the end of the call today, so the first hour and a half, you have speakers and resources, and then an hour and a half into the call, that's 10:30 Mountain Standard Time. That is the time we go into breakouts. So we have volunteers and coaches, our speakers. We have a ton of resources at the end of the day today in an hour and a half, and then you'll be able to speak directly with them. Ask questions about your LinkedIn profile, your resume, things like that. So stay tuned for that. We also do have the capability for you to have live transcription, and that's the closed captioning. It's again usually on the bottom of your screen. It says closed captioning or show captions or live transcript, something like that, depending on which version of Zoom you have. And so it's on the bottom of your screen. You can click that, and then you can see the closed captioning. And on the next screen here, this is our agenda for today. So you're going to hear from Andrew on measuring your business impact and then demonstrating your value. And then we'll hear from Debbie on harvesting more joy in your life and the lessons that she's learned from a year of joy. I will close it out with some resources, and then we will go into breakout rooms for the last hour. So again, that's your time to engage with speakers, engage with coaches, engage with people that we have available for you today. And the other thing I wanted to tell you guys is I'm going to drop this in the chat. One of the ways that we love for everyone to connect with each other is through LinkedIn. So since we are a virtual event, one of the best ways that we can network with each other is being able to connect through LinkedIn and networking through that platform. And so if you could drop your LinkedIn URL in the chat today, and then make a choice to go back and connect with people that are dropping their LinkedIn URL in. And sometimes LinkedIn is, sometimes it only allows you to have 10 a day, 10 connections a day. Sometimes it allows you to have more. It depends also if you are, what level you have. The free level usually stops you around 10 a day, but that changes all the time. So click on the URL that's dropped in the chat. I just dropped mine, and I also dropped in the explanation, the directions on how to grab your LinkedIn profile. You can open up a browser on your computer and go to LinkedIn. And then the easiest way I tell people is click on your picture. When you click on the little picture icon, then it will take you to your profile, and that URL in the search bar is your URL, your personal URL. So just do a right click, copy, and drop it in the chat. And I would love to connect with all of you. But the reason we do this is, one, of course, networking. But the way that LinkedIn works is who you are connected to in your first level, then all of a sudden you have options, or you have the ability to connect with second and third level in their network. And so that's how it works. So if you go for 50 connections of people that you know, and then the next level is 500. Those are the two numbers that make a big impact on LinkedIn. And so once you get to 500, then you have a lot of connections, a lot of ability to reach people that you need to reach. So connect with people on LinkedIn. I love one of my friends, Brenda, and she says you can do LinkedIn in 5 minutes a day. All you have to do is make one new connection, comment or like somebody's post that you're interested in, and reshare or create your own post. You can do that in 5 minutes a day. And that will get you super active, and it won't be overwhelming to you. So those are some tips on LinkedIn, but thank you, Leo and James, Rita, Tim, thank you all for posting your LinkedIn URLs. Please connect with each other, scroll up and down the chat, and that way you guys can each connect with each other, and then do some networking offline as well. All right, so I'm super excited to hear our first speaker today. Andrew Cannon leads the art and science of joy and is co-founder of EQ Joy. Andrew has a background of over 30 years working in the market research and insights sector, advising decision makers on making customer-centric decisions. And for the last 12 years, has held the position of executive director at GRBN, the Global Trade Federation for the Market Research Industry. And in this role, Andrew has led numerous initiatives to promote and protect the industry, including a large-scale initiative on measuring the ROI of insights. And over the last few years, Andrew has used his understanding of people's values, attitudes, and behaviors to dive deep into the drivers of and the barriers to joy. His own struggle with depression taught him the fundamental truth that strong self-love and authentic belonging are crucial building blocks for a joy-filled life. And through the charity EQ Joy, Andrew is currently on a dual mission to empower children to develop emotional intelligence and to empower adults to harvest more joy in their lives. I'm excited to bring this topic to you today because this is the type of thing that when people are going through a major life change like career transition, it can feel lonely and hard. And so I'm excited to hear Andrew and what he has to tell us about how to get through this and get through it well and do great things. So can I have a wonderful welcome, please, for Andrew Cannon? Welcome.
Thank you, Andrew.
Hey,
You're
Andrew.
welcome. Thank you. There you go. You got me. And now I should have control of the slides as well, hopefully. Very good. Well, thank you, Jessica, for the introduction, and welcome everybody to today's session. I'm going to be talking to you about business impact. But before I do, I just a couple more words about myself, just to sort of explain this transition. So I'm going to be focusing today on the research from the Global Research Business Network about business impact. Debbie, my partner, is going to talk more about joy and EQ joy and the emotional intelligence side of things, which is where we're both focusing at the moment. But obviously in the breakout rooms, I'm more than welcome to talk about joy and emotional intelligence as well as business impact, whatever you want to come and talk to me about. I'm happy to talk about that. So yes, why am I here to you today talking to you about this issue? Now, the GRBN is the global trade federation for the market research industry and insight sector. And whilst I'm going to specifically talk about the work that we've done for them and people in that sector on measuring and demonstrating their impact, I believe that a lot of the learnings are applicable to everybody working in business, no matter what area of business you're working in. So hopefully you'll find value from it, but excuse me if now and again I mention things specific to insights. So this sort of went back a few years ago when there's a big piece of research done by the Boston Consulting Group, Yale University, and a consulting company, Cambia, into what makes a great insights function. And one of the things they found was that those insights functions who are measuring and demonstrating their ROI or their business impact were much more successful than those who weren't. But at that time, it was only about 1 in 5 insights functions in any shape or form were measuring their impact. So you can imagine the situation being that a function is given $10 million, $20 million, and they got no idea what they've done with the money, except to say we ran 100 projects, or we've run 500 projects, 20 projects more than last time, and we did 10% cheaper than we did the year before. So they found themselves in a role where they were demonstrating their value by A, the amount of work they'd done, and B, the discount they were able to give the company through good procurement. Excellent stuff. The challenge around that being was you are then seen as a function, and this applies also to an individual, you are seen as a cost center, not a source of return on investment, not a source of impact. So the controllers, the financial directors would look at you and say, okay, to be better, you're going to have to do more projects. You're going to have to cut more costs. So they found themselves in a spiral of decreasing budgets, decreasing headcount, as that was how the business was seeing them. You guys are great at doing projects. Okay, take this DIY tool, take this AI, do more for less. And that became hugely frustrating. So we got together with a lot of the leaders and said, look, we need to find a way to start to measure value, right? Measure the actual impact in terms of why we're contributing to the business, why we should be seen as something the business should be invested in. And so we went back to BCG, and I worked with them to interview ultimately hundreds of business leaders in the insights function across the globe around this, and talk to many in more in-depth interviews of what's working, what's not working. And based upon all that research, we came up with this sort of model framework, which I'm going to talk to you about today, which we then the first one was called ROI, or return on investment, but we found a lot of people got scared by the term ROI. So we softened it down to business impact, just to keep their heart rate down a little bit. But if you want to do it really well, obviously ROI is the way to go. But if it gets scary, at least talk about business impact. And that has its value, as you'll see when we look at the framework. So that's enough introduction on that. Let me try and get down to some of the details. First of that, just a clear understanding back 2016, but it hasn't changed much since then, I believe. But the reason for this is the C-suite, actually, that's what they want. The number one thing they want when you look at these business functions is, hey, why are we giving you the money, right? Like every day they've got so many choices of how they spend their money. Why should they spend it on you as a function, but also if you as an individual, right? When you're looking for a job, why should they be talking to you? Yes, you should talk like a business, think strategically, have a point of view, da-di-da-di-da. But ultimately, what is your value, right? And I think, when Debbie's going to talk about the ROI as well, or talk about joy, I think also there, it's a good thing to think about, what's the value of your time? What are you doing with your time? How are you contributing in your life? What's your purpose? So there's also a sort of an ROI related to that. So the first question is, if only 1 in 5 functions, the insights functions, are measuring ROI, and most of those are doing it fairly slapdashly, as one could say. The question is why? So let's talk about the barriers. First of all, it's probably good to understand some of those. And again, this applies to insights, but I think it's applicable to everybody else. First of all, it's difficult to do. So from an insights perspective, you could do a study, a big customer satisfaction study, which is then used by the organization in multiple ways. And the learning from this really for me is they use that as an excuse for doing nothing, right? Because they said, oh, if it's difficult, then I'm not going to bother. Instead of saying, okay, it's difficult and I can't do it perfectly, so I'm going to do it as best I can and make my assumptions and so on. That's a much better strategy than looking at this hurdle and saying, just because it's difficult, I'm going to put my hands up in the air and say, no, nothing can be done. It's not the right strategy. And I think that's also, in career transition type situations as well. It's difficult. And so again, you've got a choice to say that, can I try to break down the barriers, or can I, do I give up? Do I just say, no, this is tough, so we're not going to do it? So it's applicable, I think, also to this situation. The second one, and I think this applies to many people, whatever part of the work you're in, that how do you isolate your impact from everybody else's impact? So think about it from a simple case in the insights world is advertising development, right? So you can do research into the adverts at the beginning. What does the consumer want? What's the messaging, and so on and so on. But then that information is given to a creative agency who goes away and designs some beautiful advertising, which then is given to a media agency who designs a great media strategy. And then you have some result at the end of that. And everybody claims responsibility, right? So if you know the advertising industry, they all hop off to the south of France once a year to Cannes, and they drink champagne and tell each other how great they are at doing advertising. All good fun, all good fun. But if you actually go online and you looked at their presentations for their awards, they're actually talking about research, most of them. They're talking about how we understood the consumer, how we met their needs, how we developed this campaign that actually drove sales through this understanding. They're actually better at selling the story, right? So that's why they get in the insight. So again, from your perspective, it's one thing to understand your value. The next thing is, how do you package that? How do you demonstrate it? How do you show that it was you? Not in a way that offends everybody else, because you don't want to be seen as the person in the room who's overly cocky and thinking that it was all about you, right? So yes, understand your contribution to the total, but share that glory, right? So the insights functions that do this well, they actually give materials to the marketing department, to the innovation department, to show them how great they are, because they know if their budgets increase, the drip down happens to the insights function. So it's not about saying insights is great or I'm great in your perspective, How did you fit in? How did you work as a team, right? Yes, your contribution individually, but what did the team do is equally valuable. Don't be shy when you're talking about in your CVs, for example, about the impact you've had. Talk about the impact you had of the department you're in, of the team. What did you achieve together, right? And yes, you can explain your role in that, but it's equally valid if you're talking about what your team has achieved. So don't shy away from that. And this thing with the insights is that let's take about the pharmaceutical industry is a good one, right? It could take maybe 5-7 years from a piece of research being done to the actual product being delivered to the market, the drug being available. So a lot of people get frustrated that, hey, I'm doing the work today and the impact is 10 years down the road. How do I deal with that? And so that's an issue that they've had to deal with, and we can talk about that a bit later, how to solve that issue. Distance from the business. So Insights has a problem like some other business units that they are a center of excellence in many organizations, which means they're actually not in the teams making the decisions. So therefore, they struggle to actually know what's going on in the room. So they're given a piece of work to do, they go off and do it, and they got no idea what's done with it afterwards. And many people in different functions, maybe in the HR function, also can have that frustration sometimes. You're just given a certain bit of access and you don't really know what's going on in the big picture. So that's a challenge that needs to be overcome. But again, it's addressable, but just to be aware that that is a challenge. This is an interesting one. That the business objectives are not defined. And it does amaze me, even in lots of the big companies, they do a particularly poor job at quantifiably defining what they're doing. And they get away with doing a lot of stuff with not very clear objectives. But at some level in the organization, there normally is a quantified business case being made. It might be forgotten, it might be buried in the finance department, but somewhere when they've asked for the budget, especially like if they're building a new factory or launching a new product line, they've had to go to the finance department and basically sell their case. So that document normally exists somewhere, but Insights, unless they ask for it, don't have access to it. And I'm sure that's the case of many of you in your business. You're asked to do something and you don't know why, what's the value behind that, but somebody does. And it's normally somebody in the finance department. So again, most people shy away from interacting with the finance people because they're scary. But if you can make them your friend, they can actually provide you a lot of value to help you demonstrating your value to the business. So try and be friends with the CFO, even if they're scary. Insufficient staff to measure. This is one, again, we help people overcome. Yes, it does take time, but if you do it using our framework, you can actually do it in minutes rather than hours each week. So it can be done, Anyway, those are just some of the reasons, many there are, but we managed through the framework to basically get rid of all these objections, which was good to know. All right, and the metrics, forget that one, that's okay. All right, let's talk about the framework. Let's get into the meat of this thing. So like any good frameworks, it's got 3 dimensions. So you can, like a tripod, not easily knock it over, but it's not too confusing that you can't use it. So let's talk about them overall. But before we do that, let's talk about the process, because it's the framework's one thing, but I think we want to talk the process. And this is why I said from one of the objections that they don't have the business case at hand. But you need to find that, right? If you don't know why the business was doing this, you're going to be pretty stuck. So whatever you're doing, make sure you understand why the business was actually trying to do this. What were they looking to do? And to quantify that if you can. Were they looking to increase sales? Were they looking to reduce costs by 10%? Were they looking to sell more units for a certain pack size? What was the issue they were trying to achieve? The next question is, okay, well, that's what they're trying to do. How does my work actually fit into this picture? What is my role and how is it actually going to impact this business case? So why the hell am I doing this work? Let's put it that way. Is a question to ask, because sometimes you know that and sometimes you don't. So it's good to refer to that. Once you do know that, that will then give you the ability to define your own metrics. And yes, we can talk about top level metrics like, increased sales, but there's a lot of subtle metrics that you might also want to think about. And we talk about those today, about some of those metrics that you might want to consider to use where you don't necessarily know your impact on sales. Then obviously, any good measurement, you need to evaluate the metrics. That's where the research comes in, obviously. And finally, you end up there with the ability to demonstrate. So we're going to talk about today, I'm going to talk a little bit about measurement, and then I'm going to talk about how we help the insights teams craft these statements of impact. So let's move on to that. All right, here's the framework. 3 dimensions, as I said, which I'm going to talk through each of 3 of them separately. One is granularity, the second is perspective, and the other one is shades of impact or shades of ROI. And when you combine these 3 dimensions in different ways, you can basically solve almost all of the problems of measuring impact, which made us excited when we found out that it's actually possible to do. Some of it's a little bit cheating when we get down to the shades of ROI, but that's okay. So it's okay to cheat now and again if it's for a good cause. So I'll explain to you why that's important. So this is a very simplified case of how this works in the insights functions. But basically, their day consists of doing hundreds of projects, right? So in a year, they got to do all these different projects for all different parts of the business, which is, what they're actually doing. What they need to be doing when they talk about business impact is shift the focus away from projects to business decisions. Because what they found is that measuring individual projects is extremely hard. But when you focus on, for example, you could do 3 or 4 projects which fed into a business decision. So let's think again about this advertising example, okay? So when they were doing the advertising work, they would do projects to start with around what was the customer need. So they'd find that out. They'd do projects around quantifying the different market segments for the target group. They'd do projects around the creative, which of these creatives is better. They'd do projects around measuring, tracking the impact of the advertising. Did anybody see it? Did they like it? How did it impact their preference for the brand? And all of those fed into the business decision. Was the advertising any good? Did it increase sales? What is a good investment? What was the impact? So when they combine all of those different researches, they could actually pick from different ones what was the impact on the decision. So they could actually craft a story around the business impact, pulling in from different projects. So we always told them, don't report on projects, report on business decisions, right? Ultimately, that's what the business cares about. But the projects can also feed into these different areas of the business. And obviously, we'll say business decision area, marketing, innovation, HR, or, is it a brand? Is it a country? But what they also forgot was this strategic priorities line. And so again, that's just a little tip for all of you that if you are looking to work for a stock exchange listed company, I strongly recommend that you sign up to their quarterly investor calls. Okay, because during those calls with investors, they will go through what their strategic priorities are and how well they are working against those. And so if you know those, it does 2 things. Obviously, it enables you when you apply for an interview or you're talking about a new job, that you know what the C-suite is interested in, what are they focusing on this year, but it also tells you what are they being paid their bonuses on, okay? And so just being purely sort of, sneaky about it if you're going to go into the interview and you're talking the language of the things which that company's top management are having their bonuses applied to. You will be seen as much more valuable, right? You'll be seen much more aligned with what's important to them. And it might not be what you think, right? When you think about it from a consumer perspective or an employee perspective, it's very different from a shareholder perspective. So again, highly recommend you listening to those investor calls and understand what they're talking about, how they're trying to grow the business over the next 3 years, 5 years, whatever timeline they're putting on that. And you can feed into that. And then obviously the overall impact is also good. So for all the different stuff, you can use the granularity level to decide what level are you going to present when you're demonstrating your impact. So that's useful. Okay. The second level is perspective, and this is the time lag question, right? So most of our people we were working with, they were hooked on this. What was my actual impact? Did sales go up? Did we manage to save money? Whereas the finance organization tends to work on this side. Okay, what is the expected impact? What is the forecastable impact on what we're doing? So no, you don't need to worry about the time lag then, right? If you don't have to wait for the impact to actually happen, you can actually starting to forecast the impact. Okay, and obviously you need to put your assumptions that this forecasted based upon. But I always remember I've got a good friend. I've lived in Finland for many years, and my good friend works in the forest industry. And one of their questions was, okay, well, to build a new paper factory, right? Should we invest in this or not? Now, apparently the number one decision factor for that is the projected cost of cellulose for 50 years, right? And nobody knows that. Nobody's clever enough to be able to know what will be that cost 50 years down the line. But the clever people can forecast that from the information they've got, and they'll put a range to say, okay, it's going to be between A and B. So a lot of researchers, and I don't know whether this applies to many of you, are perfectionists in nature. So they're trying to, actually measure something that's totally measurable. And then if they can't do that, they give up. Whereas, funnily enough, in the finance department, they're actually much more loose with numbers. They're actually good at talking about ranges, talking about parameters, talking about risk. And so that they don't mind that you're going to forecast your impact and say what is the likely impact, so long as you're putting your assumptions behind why that is. So that's what I recommend for you. Don't be afraid to forecast. Don't be afraid to guess, so long as you've got your assumptions behind that. And again, if you're working in a big company, there's normally a forecasting department you can turn to whose job is to do this. So you just go and talk to them and say, hey guys, this is what we're trying to do. This is the sort of my impact that I've had. Can you forecast what you think that impact will be on the business? And a lot of those are geeks. So they'll probably happily say, yeah, you go and buy them a coffee. They'll happily sit down with you for 10 minutes and play around with their little model and tell you, okay, putting in your inputs, this is the impact you're going to get. So again, make friends with the finance team, make friends with the forecasting team. They're going to help you in lots of ways. Cool. All right, so number 3, the shades of ROI. This is where we cheat a little bit because obviously from an ROI perspective, it's up at this end of the scale, right? Ideally, you want to have a financial ROI, and we'll talk about this in a minute, and we'll talk about the other ones. Now, there's a very strict measurement for measuring ROI when you talk to the finance folks around the actual cost side of this equation. Now, in many instances, you will not know the cost side of the equation. You'll only know the impact size. But you cannot talk about ROI because it's a return on investment unless you know how much has been invested, right? And in many cases, you don't have access to that information. It's a hidden hidden thing. So again, talking about a new factory, you might not know all of the costs that are going into that, right? You're just talking about sales of a new product, but if it needs a factory to produce that product, you might not have access to that factory information. So in that case, you would have to talk about financial business impact would be the impact on sales, right? So that's what you could talk about, but I would just say try and be clear and not use too much the ROI term unless you actually know the cost side of the equation. Talk a little bit about finance business impact, and then this is where the magic happens in these surrogate variables. Now we're going to talk about what we mean by that one in probably a few minutes when we get to that slide. But these are things you can measure, but they're not the direct numbers on the impact on the business. And one I would talk about very simply would say an NPS score, a net promoter score, for those of you who know that measurement tool. So it's how much would you recommend? You've probably answered lots of surveys like that, right? How much would you recommend this service provider or this company based on that? And so an NPS score is an example of a surrogate metric. It's something you can measure, but it's not a direct impact on the business, but it's linked to it. So these measures, they're basically linking variables between something you're doing, you can measure its impact, and forecast then how that actually impacts the rest of the business. Now, if you can't get there, we talk about these lower impacts, which in a way starts with the qualitative impact, which is around asking and understanding, how did you actually impact the decisions of the decision makers, not the output, right? So an example of that would be where a team was going to do decision A, but because of the research, in this case, because of the person's input, they decided to do B. Right? We don't actually know what that actual impact was, but you've changed the course of the boat. You've changed the course of history. So don't underestimate the value of that story, right? Especially where you're preventing people from making dumb decisions, right? They're really good stories. So again, thinking about your own work, how you've had impact on people. Think about the times that you've prevented your colleagues from making dumb decisions that would have cost the company money had you gone down that road. That is really valuable stuff to put on your CV to show that, okay, it's not just about that you spent money, it's that you actually prevented the company from doing silly things, right? So even in a case of, you know, a small business, it could be, okay, well, we were going to launch this crazy flavored donut and nobody was going to buy it. And we actually sort of stopped them from doing that. So there can be all sorts of different ways you can talk about this, but think about that in terms of stories. Okay, you could, in a bigger company, you could do ratings. So you could actually ask your decision makers, am I valuable, right? So it's like a 360 in a way, asking people, what impact have I had? Have I, you know, what's a positive impact and how and why? So don't be shy, don't be scared of asking others for verbal as well as numeric. You know, if you work with 50 people or 100 people in your career, send them a message at this point, right? You're looking for a new job, tell them, hey, what did I do good? What could I have done better? Right? And build up your own self-evaluation that you can then share honestly and objectively with the potential employee. I think they will value that you've done that effort to gather information about previous people who've worked with you and said, yeah, on a scale of 1 to 5, you know, I got a 4.2 or 3.8, pretty pleased with that. And then to talk about the story, about your strengths and potentially your development areas, because they're going to want to know anyway. So if you've gone ahead and done that in advance, it saves them a lot of effort and it shows, well, you're on the ball, you know, you're authentic, you know yourself. And finally, get some anecdotes. So either in the lift or in the canteen, sometimes that's the only time you get to talk to senior management. Just ask them for, you know, a soundbite and collect those sound bites. And so you might not know while you're doing it. And this is a bit, you know, for most of you, probably after the fact. But if you're going to get a job and then maybe later you get to transition again, if you've collected these little anecdotes and put them in a little folder on your computer or on your telephone, when the time comes to again to demonstrate your value, you've got all these little stories that otherwise you wouldn't remember because life gets in the way. So try and collect these little tidbits of information. I've done that at the moment when I've asked people, and I've transitioned out of my job from doing the research into the stuff about joy. I've got some great quotes from the people I've worked with in the research industry, saying what good things I did. And I might not necessarily remember that 5 years down the road. So now I've got them in a little file. And it also feels good, right? That you can look at it now and again and you say, wow, these 10 people have said these really nice things about me. Right? Because sometimes we just focus on what's bad about us and we don't remember to think of all the good things we've done and the good people we are. So to actually have that in a little place and look at it now and again, even in those darker moments, can make us go, wow, I was actually appreciated in that job, even if it ended not the way I wanted to end it. But over the years, there were many good things that happened and people appreciated me on the team in many different ways. So try and collect that information, try and, boost yourself as a little peacock now and again. We're all good, valuable people. Just remember that. Okay, so let's go into a few of the details on this. I'll try not to bore you too much with some of the details. But here you go. So the finance one is super simple, right? Profit, top line growth, bottom line growth. But the one that people most often missed is cost avoidance, right? They don't think about that as an impact. But from a CFO perspective, that is one of the biggest things you can do because they hate spending money, right? They really hate spending money. So anything you can do to convince them that you prevented them from doing that in your work, you prevented, as I say, bad, costly decisions, that really is a great financial impact. So underline that one, cost avoidance, cost avoidance. But let's get to the beef of these surrogate variables. Here's just an example of this. There are dozens of these variables, but just take a moment to read through this list. I don't know how many there are on there, 16, 17, whatever that number is, and think about them. They all in some way, they either relate to a top line financial metric or a bottom line financial metric. And they're all things that are measurable in some way. So, in a very simple way, brand awareness, that brand awareness was 20%, now it's at 25%, 5 percentage point increase in brand awareness equates to an increase in consideration, increase in preference, to buying interest, to ultimately sales. So there are all these models, and they're basically two models that you can consider. One would be a sales funnel model, and one would be a customer journey model. So how does a customer get from point A to actually buying the product, or how does it get from the sales funnel in terms of becoming aware to doing it? These aren't necessarily straight line models, right? But there is a path normally that most people follow. And so if you understand that impact of that journey, you can start to measure these variables. So my request to you is, after today, to spend a moment thinking about your current, your previous job. What variables could you have used to measure your impact that weren't the top line measurements, but were these intermediate measurements? And thinking about future jobs and future businesses, future roles you're going into. How does their business model work? What are the most important metrics to them? And if you don't know, ask them, right? Before you go into an interview, just say, hey, I'd just like to know, how are you measuring success in your business? Not just on a high level, but what are the things driving the success of your business? And they could say, well, it could be, new customers in this market where we've got a new competitor come in and they're really attacking our preference numbers, right? And so if you get some knowledge like that, it can help you again frame how you want to do that. And if you can't get that information, Google, and in today's world, AI is a fantastic tool, right? You can go and spend half an hour chatting with ChatGPT or your preferred friend around this scenario, and they can actually help you come up with these sort of information, right? Because a lot of it's publicly available through different reports, different market reports. So it knows a lot of this information that's not hidden information. So use that. All righty. Just going to give you one simple example. Got millions of examples of this, but this is a way you could build up a sort of a tree from profit. So this profit on this case was driven by two things, by incremental revenue and incremental cost savings. Now, each of those has drivers as you go down those surrogate metrics, which is just presented here as driver 1, 2, 3, and 4. On the next slide, I'm going to show you an example of how this works in practice. So it's probably more relevant to catch that. So in this case, the incremental revenue which they could forecast came from a forecast of how many units they were going to sell, which came from an actual measurement of how their preference increased. So say the brand preference was, say 20%, and they managed to increase it through their intervention to 25%. They had a model which told them how much 1% of preference, how many sales that generates according to what was currently the situation. So you could look at the business and say, okay, we've got, let's say 200 million sales and our preference is 20%. You would know what 1 percentage point of sales is worth from that preference. And then basically you can use that simple mathematics to calculate what is the incremental value of 1% as a surrogate. And then on the other side, on the costs, they wanted to save costs, and they did that in two ways. They actually saved hours and they saved money. The money people mostly remember, but some people don't remember to calculate how much time they've saved and the cost of time. If you save a business unit 3 months, it's got two costs involved in that. The first cost is that actually took less hours, so it was cheaper to do. But the second cost is that you get to market quicker, right? So when you get to market quicker, you actually gain increased incremental value for that. Okay, so again, it's important to think about hours and the value of time, not just costs. Okay. Finally, I know it's a lot, it's very heavy stuff, but hopefully it's interesting, is the demonstration of the business impact. So we recommended to use this simple model where there's basically 5 boxes. Pressed the wrong button. Let me see if I can get back. Okay. Get that. One thing I'm good at is, or one thing I'm not good at is PowerPoint and all these sorts of technical things. Yeah, I did it. Fantastic. Amazing. The model basically is what we want them to look at is a 5-step model of their impact. Obviously the background, what they've impacted, what they did, the key insights, and the impact. What we found when they're doing it naturally, they focused on these 2 boxes. They focused on what they did and what was the output of that they're doing. And that was the least important thing the business people cared about, to be honest with you. They didn't really care about what you did, but they wanted to know why you did it and what was the result of what you did, right? So basically, when you're talking about yourself and your achievements, don't talk too much about what you'd actually have achieved in terms of what you're doing, but talk about why you did it and what was then that impact that it had on the business. So these boxes at the end. But let's talk about them in a bit more detail. From the background perspective, we encourage the business people, the insights people to work on the backstory, to find earlier research, to find that market overview. As I said, you get that from the shareholder meetings or the annual reports quite often, the quarterly reports. And again, in a big picture for companies you're looking to work through, a lot of this you can find on the internet with ChatGPT's help or Gemini's help. They can actually help you craft a lot of these background stories. that you could do that. But in a business context, if you're working in the business, to talk with the business decision makers to understand why are they doing this. Okay, super important. The next one in terms of the business questions, yes, the business case is important, but as I mentioned earlier, talk about how are they going to use this decisions, right? Are they going to make a go no decision? Are they going to buy a company because of this decision? Are they going to choose advertising A over advertising B, right? So what are the concrete decisions that are going to be made? Because then you can understand how your work actually impacts those decisions as well as the actual business results. So you get a double way of measuring value. And as I mentioned right at the beginning, focus as much as you can on the strategic priorities of the business. How is what I'm doing? How is that moving the bonuses of the big bosses? Okay. So that's fine. And then the business impacts, I said, this is where you're using that shades of business impact, shades of ROI to actually think down from the top right, where we're looking at that financial business through those non-financial ones, through to those qualitative decisions. You know, I say some of this stuff hasn't happened yet. So you just sit down with like the marketing director and say, hey, what do you think you're going to do? What should be done differently? What could be done differently? What will be done differently? And you're going to get a lot of story value that you can use. Okay. And then the odd quote. So that's me. That's my story of business impact from my old life. Now I'm trying to apply all this knowledge to help people find more joy in their lives and to help children develop their emotions, which is key to resilience and mental health. So I hope you found that valuable. I know it applies to the insight sector, but I hope there's a lot of stuff in there, little gems you can take away that will help you in demonstrating your own value both today as well as in the past. Don't forget that, as well as how you're going to be in the future and how you're going to do things differently than you did in your last job. Thank you, Jessica, for having me today. Hopefully you found that to be of use.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew. I love when we bring in speakers that do something different than we ever really do. And this was such great content. For any of you that maybe joined a few minutes late or didn't capture the front end of this, we are dropping in, or we are recording this webinar. And so you'll be able to go back and look at this information. You'll get an email later today. And so I know a lot of you are wanting this information. And Andrew, one thing that kept coming out in the chat over and over and over again is that people hadn't thought about incorporating into their job search and on their resume and into their conversations about money saved, about that whole component that you were talking about. And they hadn't thought about valuing their self that way. Mm-hmm. So do you have anything else to add there? I know you had to go through much of it quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously, there's no one glove fits all solution to this, but I think there's a lot of similarities with everybody's in the situation. I would just add, I suppose, to that well, I find a lot of people, they underplay themselves. They underplay their value more than overplay. And I just would like to say, try and be more peacockish about yourselves and your value, as I say, and talk to your ex-colleagues and find out what you did great. And remember that, because I think that will set you in good stead for the future, rather than focusing on the more negative sides that we sometimes have a tendency to do, to beat ourselves up about why we're in this situation.
That is such great advice. We push networking and all the time, and we talk about how to build relationships. But I think a piece that's missed in that is going and talking to and networking with and going to coffee with people that already know you. and having them pour into you, having them say, hey, this is what I've seen you do well, or this is what, remember this project we worked on together, because it can be previous colleagues, but getting those nuggets from them to remind yourself, like, you're pretty awesome. And these are things you've done. And so that you do take those and you do put them on in a brag book, or on a list of accomplishments that you're keeping for yourself. That was another great one. Somebody had mentioned that they but keeping those accomplishments. But Antonio, I'm with you. He mentioned in the chat, peacockish. It's a word we're going to use from Andrew.
Right. Good. So yeah, no, to that, and I think that's partly natural. I think, I remember when I went through a career transition moment myself a number of years ago, and I wanted to get away from the company. I didn't want to talk to anybody anymore, right? I thought, oh man, that's behind me, that lifestyle, and now I regret that I didn't spend the time, because I realized, I took it personally to start with, whereas a lot of these cases, it's nothing personal, right? It's just business. And they've got to get rid of 10 people, and you just happen to be one of those 10 people, right? It could have been Bob next door, right? It's just bad luck. Or the cut just went, 5 people from every department have to go, right? And so a lot of these decisions aren't about you. And I know we don't like that to some respect, but also take the positive side of saying, look, I worked for that company for 5 years. Just because it didn't end exactly how I wanted to end doesn't mean I have to turn my back on that 5 years of my history. Let me spend a moment to talk to the people who have worked with me those 5 years, and to build those good stories, to build those cases of what my value was, and to get those quotes and those ratings of you as a person, and to realize that losing your job doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're not valued, which we tend to draw that conclusion. It's just natural that we do that, but please realize in most cases, that isn't actually the case. It's been nothing to do with you as such. It's just trying to make more money.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much, Andrew. We appreciate you being here today, all the way from the UK. And I know you'll be around for the breakout sessions. So thank you so much. We appreciate you.
You're welcome. I'll go on mute now.
All right. All right. We're going to move on now to talk with, to have Debby Hellman talk about, or she is a leadership coach and a consultant advising business owners and their teams on growth. And she's worked for over 40 years building teams, coaching individuals, and developing a path for leadership. Debby's background in business has given her experience in coaching, mentoring, and building teams, and she is currently interested in bringing that knowledge along with some new learnings to advance more joy to both individuals as well as teams. And during Debby's time developing leaders, she has found that people are searching for more belonging and a sense of purpose in their everyday life, including the workplace. With this knowledge, Debby is passionate about helping others find a path that is more joy-filled life, looking to have a positive impact on many. And the art and science of joy brings out about new understandings of a full life filled with joy. So will you please help me welcome Debby Hellman to the stage? Yay!
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Jessica. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for being here, and thanks for including and inviting me. I'm going to talk a little bit about joy this next few minutes, and hopefully connect the dots to some of what Andrew was talking about, and help you, the audience, figure out how this could help you in your searches and in your career. What makes you joyful this week? Well, I'm going to tell you, for me, one of the things that makes me very joyful is being here this morning and I'm in Los Angeles, so it is morning for me, and having the opportunity to share with you anything that we have, Andrew and I, as we're partners, we have found over the years that might be helpful. One of the things that Andrew talked about, and I just sort of want to put this in before we move on, is the impact directly on your job, right? What you accomplished, that peacockish, as he called it, that you want to wow the people. And Jaleesa in the comments section actually mentioned that she also puts in her brag book what she has done in the community. And I want to say that that is so useful because it gives another dimension to your story of who you are and some of the things you may have accomplished outside of your actual position in your career. So don't forget to include that when you're talking about all the wonderful things that make you so valuable. So let's just put that question out for later on. What makes you joyful this week? And we'll move on. Key learnings from the year of joy is really what I wanted to talk about today. Andrew and I set on this journey of about 5-6 years ago, talking about joy and how do we bring it to the forefront, especially in business, but for individuals so that we could build a better society. We decided on a whim to build a community, and we made this community free for everyone in the world to join. And in this community, we would have speakers, experts, talking about joy, trying to give you tools, tips, knowledge, information, resources, so that you too could build a joyful life. So as Jessica said, we move on. I am Debby Schlesinger-Hellman. I am with Andrew, the co-founder of the Art and Science of Joy, and EQ Joy, our nonprofit, as well as Elevare, where I am, as Jessica mentioned, a consultant helping people strategize growth for their businesses, working with managers and leaders on leadership skills and understanding how better to move things forward. So what is joy anyway? It's a really big question. Often people talk about joy being happiness. And yes, there's a place for both, happiness, joy. But Andrew and I have uncovered that happiness is external, something that happens outside of you that makes you feel happy. And that is wonderful. And yes, we should continue that for as long and as much as we can. But joy, on the other hand, is something internal, something that we get to personally build for ourselves. So how could I do that? Can I actually impact my feeling of joy? Well, of course you can. I always say, and Andrew often laughs at me, that I like to think of my joy as a muscle. And I need to build that muscle just like I need to build my abs or my pecs. As I go to the gym every day so that I can work on that, well, I have to work on my joy as well. Most of us live our lives by accident. We live it as it happens, let's say. But if you really want joy and fulfillment, you have to live intentionally. It's really important to think about that. It has to be purposeful. So the good news, as you can see on this slide, is that joy just doesn't simply happen. We choose it. Now, some people are born with just sort of better joy genetics, if you will, than others. So 50% of your joy is sort of predetermined when you're born. Could be, your family history. It could be health related. There's a lot of reasons that you're born with a feeling of joy or not. Then there's 10% of your joy comes from your life circumstances. So you know what? Those could be good, those could be bad, and those could be indifferent or neutral. You could have some really heartbreaking things that have happened over the course of your life. You could also have some really fabulous things that have happened over the course of your life, and that would help determine how joyful you are. But there is 40% of your joy is actually intentional, something that you have control over. So how do you take care of this? What do you do with this information? And how does this help you? Well, in the Year of Joy community, we found that there were many ways to build that joy muscle, both individually and collectively. The Year of Joy community, which we started out to be a one-year sort of experiment, if you will, which is now on year 3, has been a rewarding and life-changing experience for many. People, we determined through a joy score that Andrew and I developed, which actually measures your joy, and we were able to determine how joyful actually people are. So you get this joy score, and we found that 31% of the people were not very joyful. The bulk of the people were somewhat joyful, and a smaller percentage were very joyful. So what are we going to do with this information? How can we make a difference so that people could be more joyful? So the impact of being in the Year of Joy community gave us a lot of information. After 6 months, we found, and let me just preface, as Andrew has said before, we come from the research industry, so we're always measuring everything. 68% claim to be more joyful after 6 months or more, and 20% increase in the joy scores amongst those who are actually struggling to experience joy. This is really important because what this tells us is if you're intentional about building your joy muscle, you have a better chance of becoming a more joyful person. And what does that do for you? Well, that does a lot in your life. That does a lot both personally and collectively with your job, your family, your friends. The impact of being in the Year of Joy was actually life-changing for some people. It was so important and impactful. That is why we continued it on year 2 and is still in it, because people begged us not to close down this community. In this community, we had experts from all areas that would support what we called the 4 pillars of joy drivers. So first and foremost, we always talk about having well-being. Well, we all know that we need to be physically healthy, and we really need to be mentally healthy. But we also found you need to be emotionally healthy and spiritually healthy. Those things deliver a balanced well-being, which impacts your joy. We also know, as human beings, we need to be together. We need a sense of belonging. And I'm sure many of you, especially those who are looking for a new career, a new position, a new job, you're missing that belonging with your colleagues, with your peers at your office, whether you are remote or in person. We all need to belong, whether it's with our friends, our families, our coworkers, at school, at church, whatever it is, we need a sense of belonging. We also notice that the very most joyful people in the world, like the Dalai Lama, need to and want to have a positive impact on this world. Now, that could be in many ways. It could be on people, a positive impact on others. It could be on our planet. There's a lot of ways to have a positive impact. It is one of the driving factors for my joy, is that I want desperately to have a positive impact on other people. And then we determined that we need experiences. We need fun in our lives. So we decided everyone needs to have some sort of entertainment, art, music, whether it be hobbies, things that deliver joy into our lives personally, that then explodes and it becomes more collective joy for the whole society. Now, of course, there are barriers to joy. And life is not all rosy. So you can build your joy muscle and still have challenges and barriers. The truth of the matter is, when you build your joy muscle, you're able to manage those challenges that come your way. There are individual challenges, there are collective challenges, there's daily life stressors and anxiety, there's grief, there's worries. I'm a big worrier, so having joy in my life really, really helps me. But it is important to build the joy so you're able to manage these barriers that come your way and try to sort of knock down your joy. And you're able to manage through them. An example of a barrier, one slide back, please, to joy is the rushed life we're in. Might be missing a slide. That's okay. I'll just talk about this. That's okay. Trying to achieve so much while maintaining a balance, creating worries, frustrations. I know that for many years in my first career, I was working 60, 70 hours a week. That wasn't really a good balanced life. I absolutely had a lot of anxiety and a lot of frustration. But as I built my joy muscle, I was able to manage that better and also put boundaries on when I could work and could not. So here's some of the key learnings from our year of joy. These are to me, the things you want to take note of, because if you look at some of these items on this slide and the next few, it might give you an idea how to build your joy. First and foremost, you have to put yourself first. This is about you. This is about saying, I'm valuable and I deserve this. Of course, you got to walk before you can run, just like a baby, right? Crawl before you can walk. Take small steps. Don't try to do everything all at once. That's just not going to work, and that's going to frustrate you more. Set your own bar. This is an individual exercise. This is not, let's all do the same thing. This has to be customized to what works for you. Be honest with yourself. Can you do it alone? Do you need some friends? Power of community is very helpful. They might hold you accountable. They might join in this journey of finding joy. The power of friends, family, community, those are the things that are going to give you this sense of belonging that is so critical. Andrew and I talked about you first had to have well-being before you could even get on this journey. Then we discovered that some people can't get to the well-being until they have belonging, because sort of need that group that really supports you to get yourself into the best well-being state you can be. Find joy in every day. So I find joy every morning, and I know this may sound silly, but if I can get out of bed and my back doesn't hurt and I can stand straight, I'm pretty happy. That starts my day off pretty well. If I can have 2 cups of coffee in the morning, I'm also pretty joyful. But be honest with yourself. Are you ready to commit? Are you ready to actually do the work for this? You have to be gentle with yourself, and you have to be careful that you don't try too much and then just fall and say, I can't do this. Sort of like those January resolutions that so many people do in the beginning of the year. If you go too big, it's hard to stay honest with yourself and actually continue doing it. So be gentle. Find some small things you can do and add to that over time so that the joy keeps building. While you're in this journey, rediscover your passions. Find your purpose. It is not all about just finding a happy moment. It's about finding a purpose for yourself, whether that's at your Could be at your job, it could be in your community, it could be with your family, your friends, but something that fills your soul. Those are the things that will really bring you the joy that you're looking for. Service is not sacrifice. Service is something that actually fills us up. It's sort of like filling up the well. So I encourage you that these were the learnings we found from the year of joy. And what we would like to have you understand is that you too, whether you join our community, and by the way, it's free, and I'm hoping that Andrew can put the link into the chat box. It will give you a sense of what we're doing. There are tons of experts who have webinars and interviews on there, experts in gratitude or in nutrition. There's just so many things that are needed to fill up all the pillars of joy, right? So, what brings you joy? And I want to make this about a career. So I want to tie this together. Think about what you love, especially if you're looking for an entirely new career, not just a new job. But even if you're looking for a new job or contemplating that, what do you love? What are you good at? What does the world need? And what can you get paid for that answers those questions? That's the secret to having joy while you're also working. One of the big, big ahas that I have come across in my life. While we have just a couple minutes, and I know, Jessica, it's just a couple minutes, I would love to talk briefly about EQ Joy, our nonprofit. Again, Andrew and I have been on this, journey for a number of years. And when we started researching and understanding joy, what we really found out was if we as a society were to think about our young children and tackle the mental health issue that's going on and teach our young children emotional intelligence, then as we grow to be teens and young adults and adults, we would have less mental health issues. So here are some shocking, and I mean shocking and devastating statistics. And the one that really gets to me is this: 1 in 10 students in grades 9 through 12 attempted suicide in 2021. It is imperative that we as a society make this a priority for ourselves. We need to teach our young children emotional intelligence so that we can arm ourselves in generations to come with healthier and happier individuals. EQ Joy is on a mission to make every child in the world a master of emotional intelligence. It is a nonprofit registered in California. The core product is just a card game, simple, old-fashioned, around the kitchen table card game. But we also have a digital emotion explorer guide. We do workshops with children, and this helps them to understand and regulate their emotions. Now, let's be clear, we learn best as children and as adults, frankly, when we do it through play. So having games or things like that to teach is the best way that we can arm our children with this skill that is so critical. All the funds from EQ Joy are used to build the tools, all these games, and then we actually give this away to charities and other nonprofits serving children, concentrating most on underserved children right now. It is one of the best prevention tools for mental health issues. We have tested this with pediatricians, child psychologists, parents, teachers. It was well received. We have thousands of them out in the US. They're all in English. We have now had them translated for Spanish, so we're working to hopefully get those out soon. We feel that the skills are actually what will set children up to thrive. It teaches them to understand and to regulate what is important, because as we all know, life is not going to always be rosy. It's how do we deal with the challenges that we come across. So if you can imagine that we teach our children, all children, when they go into first grade, get these games, and we teach them EQ. We get them to be emotional, intelligent wizards, that in just like a generation or two, the world could look very, very different. Some of the partners we work with who bring these games to the children are Bring Hope, Boys Town, Wings, Girls on the Run, as well as some foster care places, as well as some homeless shelters with families with children, so that we can help those children build some emotional intelligence that will help them through life as they are really struggling with maybe more than most. With any of your support, any support whatsoever, we can gift packs of these EQ card games to children in need. Every little bit helps, and you can donate on our page or scan that QR code. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy to talk with everyone.
Awesome, Debbie. Thank you so much for being here today. And I love the partnership that the two of you have, Andrew and Debbie. So I don't think we got the link. So if you want to drop in the link to the chat on the community you were talking about, we would love to have that information. We can also, if you don't have it in time, you can also email it to me and we can include it in our follow-up email. All right, you guys. So thank you. Lots of great discussion in the chat. Thank you for your involvement here. I'm going to go through some resources and then we're going to move into our breakout sessions. So a couple things I just want you guys to, or want to ask you for, first of all, is if you could take a moment to take our survey. So my team is going to drop it into the chat here in a second. It's going to be a link, and we collect a couple questions, a little bit of data, because we apply for grants, and the grants allow us to keep this program free and also do a whole bunch of other programming at no cost to you. So let's see, Wendy or Sharon, if you could drop that link in the chat, that would be great. Great. Thank you, Wendy. Wendy just dropped it in the chat. So if you can open the chat and click on it and answer those couple questions, we would greatly appreciate it. And any additional feedback that you guys have for us outside of the survey, please just email us, contact@careerconnectors.org. Actually, it goes straight to me right now. And so I'm answering that email box, and we would love to hear from you. Couple other things. We have some resources that we're going to send to you. We have these available at any time, but we are sending you an email after the event today that is a review and provides these links as well as others for you to utilize. This webinar is being recorded right now, and it will be available. Usually it's by this afternoon, but sometimes, depending on how long it takes to download to our YouTube channel, it might be tomorrow morning, but you're going to get an email today and it'll have the direct link to this webinar that you can go back and view. We don't send out the PowerPoint. I had that question a couple times. We don't send out the PowerPoint, but we do send out the webinar, and you can pause and, utilize it as you'd like. Couple of people I want to thank. First of all, the Resume Writers and Coaches Association is here today. We have a couple of the ladies on the call. I believe it's Donna, Amanda, and Krista are on the call today. And they are resume writers and coaches, and so would love to support you. They're in the breakout sessions. If you have questions about your resume, your LinkedIn profile, they are wonderful and can support you in that. So if you are a community partner or another coach on the call today, or you're in the career space, this is a fantastic association to connect with because they are helpful and will make sure that anyone who is working on resumes has the current up-to-date information. And then I want to thank Best Companies AZ. They are an organization that helps with awarding and promoting companies that are best places to work, most admired companies. And so you can connect with them online. Usually we have them in a breakout session because they represent a whole bunch of companies like the ones on your screen that are national award-winning companies. Their representative today is got the flu last night, so she's not here, but if you have any questions about them, reach out to them directly, and they are great in response as well. So bestcompaniesaz.com. These are some of the awards that they work with. So great places to work, let's see, the DEI index, most ethical companies, there's a whole bunch. And so they work with those companies. And then upcoming events. We have some good stuff coming up, you guys. One of our most attended and desired event is the Red Hot Resume Panel, which is next month on March 6th. So hopefully that we bring some of the resume writers onto a panel, ask questions, and some of your burning questions that we always get around resumes. And so, because we know everyone has a different opinion when it comes to resumes. Then April, we're doing a new talk around how to magnetically attract more good fortune for greater success. And so this is really job search focused, but it's how to go after what you want. And then we're going to hear in May a discovering the modern job search, and it's all about LinkedIn. So those are some of our monthly events. And then we are on a grant right now where we're doing a whole bunch of workshops. And again, these are at no cost, and it's a grant and a partnership with Arizona Work Pinal County, which is a county out here in Arizona. They have offered to open up all of these workshops that are for Pinal County residents. They've opened them up to anyone who'd like to attend. And so we have resume writing, job search essentials, networking and branding, interview workshops, all available this month. Again, these are deep dives. These are not the higher level overviews like we do at our big monthly events. These are deep dives. It will get you an updated and current resume. It will really deep dive into interviewing and how to interview. So I encourage you to join us on some of those, and you can register all of that stuff on our website. And Kitty, thank you, Kitty. She has dropped some information in the chat around how to register for our large events or how to register for the workshops. And then if you are interested in volunteering, Kitty's one of our amazing volunteers. She's a LinkedIn coach and is available in the breakout sessions as well. But here are 3 positions I'm looking for right now. We are very interested in having somebody do some work with us on social media. So if you are interested in either learning how to do social media or you have some experience in it and would be interested in spending some time, a couple hours a month, helping us get more information out on social media on the platforms, we would love your assistance. We also are looking for somebody that would be interested in hosting a couple of these events a month. And so being our Zoom host and running the back end. And so if you are interested in that, please let us know. And then also we need somebody that would be interested in helping with getting booking some speaking engagements, working in a database. So it's 5 to 10 hours a month for each of these positions. And if you're interested in volunteering, we would so appreciate it. We would not be able to do this organization without the amazing volunteers that we have. And speaking of volunteers, thank you to all of you that are serving today. We have quite the group that is here today. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll tell you guys all where you can meet these various coaches in just a moment. And then again, we are a nonprofit organization. So as you land into your next career, if you feel compelled, please know that you can donate to Career Connectors so that we can continue doing the work that we do in our community. All right, so let's go ahead and jump over to the breakout rooms. And Wendy, I'll divert to you to kind of walk through this, but I want to let you all know, thank you for being here today. And we are praying for you to land into the career of your dreams. Thank you so much for being here. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. So Wendy, take it from here.
Okay, so can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So in just a minute, I'll open up the breakout rooms. Each speaker, as well as the different coaching areas, will have a room. When it opens, you can just, I think, click next to your name and request to go to a room, and then click again to acknowledge that. And if you have any issues, just let us know. Jessica and I and Sharon will be able to move you to a room if you're not able to get there yourself, especially if you're on a phone. I will allow screen sharing once we get into the breakout rooms. And then one other thing, as far as when you're in the rooms, if you go into a room and you want to exit, you can exit back into the main room and kind of jump back and forth. Just don't exit the Zoom call itself. If you do, you can just request to get back in and we can let you in again. Anything I missed there, Jessica?
Nope, that looks
Okay.
great. So
Okay.
he's going to work on the breakout rooms and launching those. And you can move breakout rooms. You can go to one and leave that room and come back. So we have some really great support today. Both Andrew and Debbie are each going to have a breakout room. You can go speak to them about their topics today. We have 3 resume writers, Donna, Amanda, and Krista. And they will each have their own room. So if you go into one and it's full or there's a lot of people, you can move to another room. And you can ask questions about your resume, get guidance from them. We have 2 ladies that are doing LinkedIn today, Kitty Carlisle and Jamie Starner. Welcome back, Jamie. We're so glad to have you back and serving. So they are both available to talk about your LinkedIn profile, any questions you have around LinkedIn. And then Pamela Heward, thank you, Pamela, for coming back. She is part of our coaching team. And so she's a career coach. If you have questions on interviewing, career changing, anything like that, she's your lady. She's wonderful. And then Gian Boldy is here if you have questions about kind of the financial transition or what to do with your, maybe 401k if you've moved companies or anything around the finance area. He'd love to help you there. So the breakout rooms are open. Coaches and